Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I wanted to go over signs that you're a man that majority of women want. We'll talk about that in a little bit, where those numbers come from, but it is an estimate just because regardless of research, whatever research we're looking at, some things are more application based, which means applied to real relationships. So that's not necessarily ideal preferences. However, the study in 2019 does show desire, like their preference, and that percentage is much higher. So we're going to talk about that in this video today. The research is in the description box, and that's also where you can find if you want to book a session with me. That's there as well, but that's also going to be pinned in the comments. So let's go ahead and jump in. Signs that you're a man that is basically attractive to majority of women. And it's even if you don't really want her, because I think a lot of men who are attractive, because there's a lot of women that maybe like them, it can be tricky because maybe you feel uncomfortable or guilty rejecting some of these women. And the other caveat is that women in general, which we've talked about on this channel, they don't always initiate. So you might not really know that you're this type of man just because women will just stare at you or try and make indirect signals. A lot of them won't initiate. So that's why this video I think is important. And we're going to look at it in detail together, but it also doesn't give us too much information. However, the next point I think gives more information among all the other things. And the last point in this video is a little bit controversial, which is why I put it last, because it is just a pattern that I see a lot. And some people might not like what I'm seeing. I see it so much in couples therapy. You have no idea. So I put that one last, but the next one here, you have a stable job, usually with good benefits. And usually, and even more so, if the job itself showcases traits like protectiveness, intelligence, or highly respected by nature. So I'm going to give some examples. A subpoint of this, which will contain some examples, is many women prefer men in the military, law enforcement, or firefighters. This one hits pretty much all of the points we just talked about, right? There's that protectiveness. So he's basically very dominant in society. He protects a lot of people. He shows up with those attributes. He showcases those traits. Intelligence, not necessarily, but to some extent, especially if you're higher ranking in these particular areas, you do require a level of intelligence, even to the point of education, which I understand education doesn't always equal intelligence, but sometimes people just evaluate it like that. And highly respected by nature. Most people, depending on their perspective of their own country, but a lot of people do respect military, law enforcement, and firefighters. They are people who risk their lives to help our county, our country, our society. So it's a very respectable field, okay? And many jobs are available, which means that men can pick up overtime if needed. And so a lot of women really like this. The next one is finance, but finance is also a good one because it shows charisma and wealth. And the study in 2019 shows that 97% of women find it desirable or essential for a partner to have a steady income, which I think it makes sense, right? This sounds so obvious when you say it out loud, but really it is very important. 97% of women. Now, again, it depends on, there is no way to ask every single woman, but this is just based on the amount of women that were reviewed in this particular study. The next one is you work out. And this one even more so routine based, but also how it makes you feel and how your body behaves or reacts to working out. A lot of, in my country, United States, a lot of people are overweight, especially in certain areas, like certain areas of Virginia, like Culpeper, for example, Caroline County, where I'm very close to. Being overweight is actually the norm. It's very normal. It's incredibly normal. Most people are very, very overweight. Is that people who work out are more rare nowadays, especially depending on where you come from. And it shows that you have discipline. And a lot of women like that. They find it very attractive. Now, remember I mentioned that it's not always the women you want. This is true. When I'm saying a lot of women, it can be even women that you might not find attractive, but she might like you. That's the tricky part about this, because we also have to remember a lot of women, if they're in a relationship, at least if she's healthy, because I've seen some things where women are cheating and things like that, but a healthy woman, she's not, even if she finds you, attractive, she's not really going to do anything more than that because she's in a relationship. And that's a tricky part, because a lot of women who are attractive or they take care of themselves, a lot of men commit to those women quickly, not all the time. And so you can see in the dating pool, a lot of women might be a little bit emotionally unstable. It's a little more common, I notice. I could be wrong, but I'm seeing that as well. And so it's tricky because you might be a man who you were single for whatever reason. Maybe you were working on yourself. and that's great. However, now the dating pool only has women that maybe you don't want. And that can be a tricky situation. But that doesn't mean you're unattractive. That just means that it was kind of bad timing on your part. And it'll happen. I hope so. But it takes a while. The next one is you eat a balanced diet. A lot of people do not eat a balanced diet. And so this makes you stand out, but also shows that you're disciplined. And women find discipline really attractive. Actually, it does seem that most people find discipline attractive, but more so women. Women do find discipline much more attractive. I think that's also why people with a steady income is also very attractive, because it shows discipline. The next one is you take lead. Most women find men who take lead to be very attractive, and partly because women are taught that they shouldn't take lead. And so it's comfortable to some extent to be with a man who how do I even explain it? Can speak for you. And that's probably not the best thing to admit out loud, but it is true. I will share my personal example so that maybe you guys can understand what I'm talking about. I'm a person that's kind of soft-spoken and my voice is very quiet. You guys have no idea how loud I have to make this video before I submit it. I have such a quiet voice. It's really hard, actually. And if any of you guys had a call with me, you guys know I'm always like, put the volume up because it's going to be hard to hear me. I'm trying my hardest, but it actually hurts my throat to talk very loud. And so you guys know that. Put the volume up when you're with a call with me, please. I will still try to speak as loud as possible, I promise. But it will help if you guys put the volume up. But anyways, I am very quiet. And as much as I feel comfortable in who I am, taking lead is something I'm not necessary. It's not natural to me. And so one thing about my significant other is he's just really good at taking lead. And I think it just makes our relationship much more streamlined because he takes lead and I just don't argue. Like I literally just, I tell my friends, which maybe some women don't like this, but I do it. Sometimes when he does stuff, I just like literally just zip my mouth. Like I don't say anything. And I know women say that's a bad thing to do, but it works really well in my relationship. It keeps things peaceful. And so I feel like that could be why a lot of women like men who take lead, because it helps us with some of the things that we struggle with and it just makes our life easier. I don't know if that's a good thing to admit, but I'm being honest with you. It does make things easier because it's hard sometimes to like speak up. The next one is you're comfortable speaking your mind, but you're still mindful how you come across. It does seem, based on what a lot of people perceive like a good leader, is that these men who are comfortable speaking their mind, they're also mindful how they come across, or they might even apologize, or they might try to be more personable. We've talked about this before on this channel. We've seen that a lot of times, like before presidential campaigns, a lot of these folks are going out and like showing up with the community, taking pictures of them hugging other populations and things like that, because it shows you're also mindful of how you're perceived by other people. So it's always a balance. You're comfortable speaking your mind, but you're mindful of how you come across. That balance seems to be very attractive. The next one is you're protective. We already saw that, where protectiveness is really common for men to be seen as attractive, but it also benefits women as well. People don't like when I break relationships up into a very basic psychological perspective or even biological, but it is true. That's where this is operating from. Women are smaller and weaker typically by nature, most of them. And so they're going to look for someone subconsciously that can protect them. And so if you show up protective, it is a good sign. The last one is the one that I had mentioned is a little controversial. And I think women will get more mad at me with this one because they don't like to admit that this is true about their nature. But I noticed this, okay? If you admit your flaws, women find it attractive. But more particularly if you admit your flaws and you say you're working on it. So I'm going to give an example because I probably lost a lot of you guys, but that's why I put it last. Women like a project. Most women like a project. They like a man who shows up as someone he's struggling, but he's going to change, right? Women just love that. I think it's because I think it partly is because they're the ones who carry the baby and they want to see that you are committed to her, because 9 months, it's going to take a while. She needs you to protect her during that time, etc. Plus, if she's going to raise kids, she probably wants to see that you're committed. You aren't going to leave her and she doesn't have any resources, right? And she gets abandoned. So I think that's why women care about this, because men who say they're going to change, it's hard to change, especially for a man. Men don't really like to change. I think they're getting better at it, but I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that a lot of men, they're proud of who they are. They want to be themselves. They don't like being told what to do because naturally you guys tend to take the leadership role. And so when you're able to admit your flaws and say, I'm going to change, She feels like, okay, if you're going to change, you change for me. That means commitment. That's how it's perceived. I know it's not necessarily true, but to some extent it is. And so that's why I think women like that project type of guy. And so how can that sound, or how does that look like? Maybe you can say, I struggle with commitment sometimes, but I'm working on it. I struggle with drinking, but I'm working on it, right? And this is the tricky part, because I think women, especially if they don't have a good father figure, they think that the word in of itself is good enough. Whereas I think women who maybe have a little bit more of a balanced background, they might realize that if he's too much of a project, it's too much on their lifestyle, and actually he's a risk, right? But I mean, I'm just telling you in general how to get women. And so if you want to try that one, it will work. I don't know if it's always going to work with the women you want, like I had mentioned, but you'll find somebody. I promise you will, if you do that. But you can even say, like, I'm working on being a better communicator. I'm working on showing up better in relationships. I'm working on being a more commitment forward man. Say it in a way where it's like you're working on it, you're trying to get better. You're going to attract, a lot of people. I don't know if you like them, but hopefully that helps. I hope this video was helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.